All right, the time is 4:30, and I will call the meeting of the Skagit Public Utilities District Commissioners to order for October 10th. If you would join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 5.
So moved.
Motion second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's go on to audience comments. If you're in the audience tonight wishing to offer comment, please step to the podium. Seeing all staff here tonight, we will look at Zoom. And same story there. So with that, we will jump right into the 2024 budget year.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome to the public hearing for the Skagit public hearing on the proposed 2024 budget. All of the budget information is now on the website, thanks to Shannon, and we'll continue to take public comment and post more information over the coming weeks as we work through the work sessions. The budget process starts in late summer with solicitation from all the departments for their requests for the coming year and also project updates. All of those budget requests are then compiled and to determine the district-wide needs for the coming year. We are then work together and prioritize all of those requests and align them with the district goals and the strategic plans that's in place. With the project updates, I also do a revenue forecast update and look at the financing plan for the coming year and also the next couple of years for the CIP. And then we make recommendations to the board. Tonight, it's the proposed budget, and we've scheduled 3 work sessions over the next 3 weeks to discuss, make changes, take public comment, and then adopt the final budget before year end. It's proposed to be on November 8th. And then next year, we'll monitor the actual revenues and expenses to the budget. I report back to you monthly and also do quarterly updates. We're going to start this year with the financials for the third quarter. This one I've been showing you all year. This is the year-to-date consumption. You can see 3 years of history here, 21, 22, and 23. And for the first 5 months of the year, we were right on the prior 2 years all the way through May. Then in June and July, we've had a very dry year. The activity for this year, we exceeded June and July. And then based on the prior year's activity in 22 and this year's budget, we anticipated consumption to be up here. We actually ended up a little bit below that in August, but some of this was due to just the billing cycles. So as you see, we made up all of that in September and then some. So for the year, we're 11% ahead of last year. Skip ahead, sorry. So budget to actual on dollars, this is similar. We have the 2021 actual, 2022 actual, and then this green category in the bar is the budget. So based on the prior years, you can see the budget and the trend. The line graph is the actual revenue for the year. And again, we trended just above, but right on through May. And then since May, we've actually exceeded it. And we're about 12% ahead of last year for revenue so far. So for the September revenue, we're at $24 million for 9 months. You can see if we extrapolate that out till the end of the year, I'm forecasting about $32 million. We budgeted $30.5 million. So I'm anticipating that we'll have about $1.5 million more than budgeted That's a 5% over the budget. And you can see we exceeded in every category. Commercial, government, and agricultural was about 9%. So these categories, individual larger users consume more. Dry weather had a lot to do with that. I put this together too. This will be the end of the year forecast. And so again, I took water sale revenue and then added any other revenue. So total revenues I'm forecasting out to be about $34.4 million. That includes interest, work for others, donated capital, any miscellaneous income that we receive. And then the 9-month trend extrapolated out for operating expenses, we budgeted $18.8 million. We're below budget, which is a good thing. We're about $17.7 million. There's about 4.7 million of debt service. So the estimated ending net income forecasted for the end of the year is about $12 million. So we anticipate about 10, we're about $2 million to the good for this year in net income. And then the forecast for capital this year, we budgeted $36 million. We're on track to do about 21 million of project payments this year. And so we'll take the difference between the 12 and the 21, that $9 million will come out of either reserves, or we have a couple existing loans that we still have to draw down on. So as we spend the money, then we can turn around and draw down on our loans for those to pay for those projects. The balanced budget requires that we look at all of the resources and balance them to the requirements for the coming year. That includes beginning reserves. So I take the calculation from the prior page, anticipate what the beginnings reserves will be, and then all of our revenue sources. Most of those are water revenue sales, but we also anticipate some grants and loan money next year. And those have to equal the expenditures, and then the balance is done by the ending reserve. So this is anticipating the end of 2024. So using the forecast for the rest of this year and then all of next year, these are the so our total resources will be $79.5 million. You can see that most of that is either in water sales, 33.2 million, or reserves, that's another $35 million. We also will have $6.2 million in system development fee reserves and anticipated fees from the next year. And those are reserved for board-approved projects that expand capacity, new projects like that. We also will probably receive $1 million of grants. We have about $2.2 million in grants that we've received. But most of those are fist passage projects, and we'll spend some of that money next year, but probably not all of it, depending on the projects. And then we'll also budget about $1.6 million of other revenue. Interest is the largest component of that, and then work for others and some donated capital. Those have to equal and balance to all of the expenditures. So again, $79.5 million of expenditures or uses. Most of that will go towards capital projects, $21.3 million of major capital projects. We're anticipating pipe replacement of $9.2 million. And then the operating expenses for all of the district are about $18.4 million. And $4.7 million will be spent on debt service. That's existing debt. No new debt is anticipated. And taxes, we pay out about $1.6 million. And then whatever we either spend that's plus or minus from those budgeted numbers end up in reserves. So we'll have about $18.1 million of reserves of the general fund, debt service, and capital reserves. And then system development fees are about $6.2 million. During the year, as engineering comes forward, we can get board approval to spend system development money on appropriate projects. So that could still happen next year, but right now there's none budgeted. So just in a little bit more detail of the operations and maintenance component of that prior bar chart or graph is $18.4 million. You can see by function, oops. I'll start with the water supply. We'll spend about $1 million on the supply. This is the water taken from the Skagit River and pumped into the Judy Reservoir, and also the maintenance of the tributaries that feed into the Judy Reservoir. Water treatment, function is about $2.8 million of that. That's the water plant, all the people at the water plant, the chemicals, the power used to run the operations up there. Transmission and distribution is about $2.7 million or 15%. That's to distribute it throughout Skagit County from the reservoir out to the customers. And then customer service is about $2.1 million of our budget. That includes the meter department. So the meter department goes out, reads the meters, uploads them into Beacon. Beacon is then uploaded into North Star. North Star prepares the bill. We send out and apply the payments and receive the payments in customer service. And then all other staff that's not directly attributable to any of those four functions, HR, finance, IT, some engineering is in that, that's not capitalized or included in the other departments. That's about 53% of the operations and maintenance budget. So that's the majority of the budget there. Capital projects for next year, we're anticipating almost $30 million of capital projects. Those are broken down into facilities. Most of the $12.7 million of facilities is for our new building, started out back, well underway. We have about $9.2 million of pipe replacement projects. These are our projects. They also include fish passage projects or projects done in association with the other jurisdictions for when they were doing a road improvement. We try to coordinate those projects and work in front of them so we don't have to go back and cut the roads again. Operation and maintenance projects is $4.2 million. We are included in that. We have $2 million of anticipated and hopefully delivered Badger meter regs. We're working with Badger meter to replace. We have over 1,000 dead registers right now out in our system, which causes manual reads that people in the trucks have to get out, read those. So we're trying to get all those replaced. They're back ordered. That's taken a long time to try to get them to commit to a delivery schedule. We also have $1.7 million of department budgets. That includes vehicles, software, improvements for safety, any type project like that. And then reservoirs, we have $1.2 million, about 4% of the overall capital budget on maintenance and repair of existing reservoirs and starting planning on some future reservoirs. As part of the budget, we also look at the 10-year capital improvement plan. This is just showing the next 5 years and the prior 2 years. You can see we've done about $20 or $25 million in capital improvements the last 2 years. Again, the forecast will end up about $21 million this year, which is below budget, but for a lot of those supply reasons and also just coordination with other agencies, project permitting. And so next year, I said we've budgeted $30 million. The breakdown is between major capital, pipe replacement, and then department capital. And it's important to know that at the end of each year, the projects don't stop. They don't coordinate with start and stop at the calendar year. So anything that's not done from this year or this year will actually continue on. And so we end up, it's more like a wave. This wave, we budget a little bit more than we are. This will be a stretch goal, but if we can get $20 to $25 million of it, the rest of it will come out here in the next couple of years. And these will do the same thing. So the CIP, it is a 10-year plan. The first 5 years is the most important. We have the most information, the most detail. Engineering is usually on a 2-year cycle. So they start preliminary design, it carries into the next year, and then some of that construction on the larger projects can go into the 3rd year. So it's important to look at it as a continuation. It's not every year we're going to get this much done. That 21 million is not projects completed, but it's $21 million of expenses that go along with those projects. So we're budgeting more than we're actually getting done in 1 year, but we're geared up to do between 20 and $25 million. So with supply chain improvement or permitting, all those things that go into the factors of those plans, we're moving forward on the capital improvement. To make sure that we're in balance, not only for our resources and expenditures, but also we have four main key financial metrics that are looked at. These were developed back in 2019, 2020 as part of the rate study and financial plan by Financial Consulting Services Group. And mainly they just are double checked. We want to check for liquidity. This is just a cash calculation. And this would be all of the cash and all of the funds at the end of next year. I anticipate having about $24 million of cash. The target is to be able to pay for 6 months of operation and maintenance expenses. So that's about $9 to $10 million. So that's 180 days is half that. And that's the target. We have enough money to pay for 460 days. So we're well above the targeted amount. The next one is just revenue fund balance. So we'll have $24 million of total reserves, but the general fund or just the revenue one, which we can spend on all operations. It doesn't include the system development fees. We'll have about $16 million. And the target is to have in reserves 2.5 months of operating expenses plus depreciation. So that works out to be about $6 million. And again, we're well above it by almost $10 million if all of those events happen next year. Debt service coverage is another one that banks or people that invest in bonds would look at. They want to make sure that we can always cover the debt service. So this would take the net income, which I showed earlier, which I'm anticipating to be about $16.3 million, $16.4 million. Our total debt that we service is next year is 4.7. You divide 16 by 4.7, we end up at 3.46. The minimum target is 2 times. So again, we're well above that fiscal target. And then the last one is just rate funded capital. This is kind of a simple look to make sure that we're replacing all of our capital assets. As a proxy, we use depreciation. So depreciation next year is 1 fraction of the useful life of all of our assets. That's estimated to be $9.1 million. We're spending about $26 million of capital, that's rate funded. That's the key difference here. If we budgeted 30 million, some of that money will be used from the loans or other sources, but the rate funded capital is $27 million. So again, we're spending more than that. This is key. We don't want to fall behind. I think traditionally and historically, all water and sewer districts, deferred maintenance is the easy thing to do instead of raising rates. That happened here in the 2000s. But in the last, say, I've been here 5 years and going back even before that, about the last 10 years, I think there's been a concerted effort by the board to approve rate increases and by staff and to make sure that we're doing capital projects to stay as current as we can. This list just continues to grow to replace those assets. And so that's the challenge, is to continue to do that. So what's that mean? The budget was prepared using a 5% increase across all tiers. The base rate and tier 1 and tier 2 for very high consumers of water or large commercial accounts, that's actually higher than 5%. And this continues from 5 years ago, that fiscal plan that I mentioned. We did a 5-year resolution with 5% increases for each year. So this is the last year of that financial plan. We have budgeted to do another rate study and start that at least in the coming year. My proposal will be that we wait towards the end. We have a couple of large projects that we need to get completed, and then we'll be in position to start doing that research. And part of that will be also if we want to make any changes, not just for the finances, but changes to the rate structures. That could be between classes or types of accounts. Last year, we moved some of that from commercial and capital to, from residential to the larger accounts, and also eliminated the capital account that was assessed to every meter. It was $2 and it was flat, and we increased the meter charges so that larger consumers pay more than smaller consumers. So we can do some of that in the rate study 2 analysis. A 5% increase would increase the typical residential bill. This is a 2-month bill to $142.15. You can see the breakdown over here of the base rate, $78, and then the 2 tiers for 6 CCF per month of consumption. And then the pie chart over here, it shows what that will be paying for. So if you add up the major capital projects, the pipe replacement projects and department capital, this is 60% of that $142. Another $42 is just spent on operational maintenance of the system in the district to keep the lights on. And then debt service is about $11 of that, and taxes is about $3.70. So add up all those and we get to the $142 for every other month. So it's at $6.81 bi-monthly increase. For the budget schedule, tonight we're taking public comment and public hearing. We can keep the public hearing open for written comments. They can send them to myself or Shannon. We've scheduled for October 17th, a work session at 4:30, and then another work session at 2:30 before the regular scheduled meeting on October 24th. And then if we need one, we could do it on October 31st on Halloween, if you would like to have more discussions. And then on November 8th, we'll save time to have a budget discussion and approve the budget if the board is ready at that time. But we can take as much time as needed between then and
Is it
now.
4 or 4:30 for the 17th? Because I think in our Outlook calendars it says 4.
We'll confirm that and change it if it needs to be updated. I thought we stayed at 4:30 on, but
4:30.
okay.
I'll update the.
Okay.
Yeah, the Outlook calendar shows it at 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Then if there's any questions, take them from the commissioners and we can take public comment too if there's anyone, but.
Not yet. I'm excited for our work session.
Okay, good.
Good overview as always.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and feel free if you have questions about this, or I know George sent out notification before the work sessions or even between now and then. I'll be happy to answer questions too.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Anyone here wishing to offer comments on the budget? Seeing none. Click Zoom again here, see if that's still staff. And that appears to be the case. So with that, we will move on to the general manager's report.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, the first thing I was going to touch on is just the schedule for the work session. So that's when, so next week's meeting at 4:30, we're going to get into detailed discussion of our biggest items, which are engineering, operations, and the capital plan. So, like Brian said, if there's any questions or clarifications between now and just preparation for the next work session, feel free to reach out. We'll make time and coordinate any questions or more information that you need. Speaking of capital projects, the big ones that we have been doing recently, just an update on both of them. So the transmission line, the 36-inch transmission line is in service and the 24-inch has been taken out of service. So big milestone that happened last week. We still got some work remaining to physically disconnect the lines, but they're separate as far as the water supply is concerned. So our crews will take care of a lot of that work of physically separating them over the coming months. Just remaining items for Scarcella include some restoration at various locations, and then they're gonna grind and repave College Way near the church where they crossed it there. For the new building, probably saw when you drove in, utilities are being installed in that easement there. There looks like they're installing some sewer today, but fiber has been put in, power and gas as well. So that's happening. And then you can't see it because it's off in the field, but a lot of work's being done on the building. They poured footings and stripped those last week. And then, so they're getting ready to start coming up out of the ground, some wall forms. So making good progress. And the biggest thing is just Mike Benton's doing a lot of work to try and get ahead of the submittals and making sure that we order materials on time in case there's any delay. So I know Mike and Sam and the architect, they're working with the contractor to make sure we try to limit any kind of issues with supply chain. Supply chain issues are happening everywhere. And they, anything electrical is an issue. So they're trying to get ahead of it on the building and doing the best that they can. See, the other thing that we've been working on recently is the transformer at the Skagit River diversion. So that is wired and installed and the pumps are running. So that has all been taken care of. And I know Mike sent this in an email, but Kurt Van Berkelo did a great job chasing that down and making sure all of the tasks got organized and got done. And he did great at doing that. There's still a little bit of work remaining to be completed. Mike and Kurt met with PSE, and so there's some improvements we want to make to the way that transformer was wired into PSE system. And we might have to procure some additional equipment in order to do that. So in terms of the emergency declaration, since we may still have to procure some things, my recommendation is to leave that open so that we can get that done on a timely basis as well without having to prolong it by going up to bid. So I'm recommending that we leave that declaration open until we can procure what we need, which hopefully will happen in the next couple of months, and then we close it down at that point. So, because the emergency remains open until we declare it closed.
Right.
So provide me comments on that if you have any.
Are those PSC like required upgrades that need to be done, or is it for?
Improvements that we want to make based on the operation that we saw. Mike could give you more detail if you have specific questions, but there were things that PSE had in place that were meant for some, generic customers, but not necessarily the way that we wanted to operate the SRD. And so there's improvements we could make so that our new transformer isn't seeing the same kind of response from PSE's network, which frankly was, not helping our transformer in the long run. So there's safeguards that we can put in place.
Prolong the life of it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a long way of saying that, but yeah, there's very specific things that Mike can address. If you do have questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to come up and answer them, but things to protect our asset that we just put in that had, that should have lasted longer than it did. So we're trying to keep that from happening again. That's the bottom line. If you haven't noticed already, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Should be seen, or you may not have recognized some phishing emails, because some people did not apparently. So just be aware that that's happening and it's proactively happening. And then just lastly, there was a previous PUD commissioner that passed away recently on September 26th. So PUD Commissioner Ken Vanderhyde. So his picture's on the wall. He was a PUD commissioner from 1982 to 1988. And he passed away, because at the end of September. I think he was here when a lot of decisions were being made for the Judy Reservoir water treatment plant, because that was constructed just after his tenure. So I think he had a big part to play in that. So just wanted to publicly recognize his service and thank him for being a part of the PUD. Kevin's got something posted on the website recognizing that as well, and we're going to send his family a card as well. So that is all I have.
Okay. Looks like we're gonna move on to transfer of the Fidalgo water system to the city of Anacortes. Mark jumped up, so I'm assuming you're coming up for that one.
Or he's leaving.
Yeah, one of the two. First, I want to recognize Bill Truman. He's here. Yeah, he's here. For just all the hard work that he's been doing with the city of Anacortes and Brian McDaniel to coordinate all this work and expectations about how the transfer is going to go down. And just that positive, productive working relationship really gives me a lot of confidence for things that we need to tackle with the state of Anacortes in the future. So just a really good project on which to build a good relationship. So they're doing a great job. Originally, our expectation was to be signing final documents today. But along the way, as we were providing them with additional data, they actually looked at our GIS data that we had transferred to them and found some areas where we have pipes and no easements. And so that gave them a little cause for concern. And as a result, they would like us to resolve some of these easement problems that are out there where we have to go back in and acquire the easements. The good thing is, I don't know, we don't expect this to be too much of a burden. Most of the areas are places where it's platted areas where there's an access road or where county road right of way was vacated and our pipe was in there. So there's some soft language that talks about franchisees having, being able to occupy the right of ways, but there's no like called out easement or right of way or anything like that. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of work with those to square them away. Despite this little wrinkle, we still want to move forward and make the timelines that we originally put out in our publications. We had, I think, it was October 12th and 13th. That's going to move forward with the final reading of the Anacortes intertime meter and our district meters for billing purposes. So that's still going to remain the cutoff on the water side. And then on October 23rd, the city council will hopefully approve an addendum to the original agreement. The addendum includes time for the PUD to resolve these easements over the next year until December 24th, I think, 2024. December 2024, we would like to wrap them up. So we're going to try to wrap them up. In the addenda, we are responsible for seeking these areas that need easement up to full market value, full fair market value. And then after that, the city of Anacortes and the PUD will partner to resolve it. So there may be, if it's possible, we have to go to condemnation on some of them. If that happens, it's going to be the city of Anacortes' property or their system. So they will need to be the lead agency on that and we will back them up. I don't really see a reason why it would go to that, but just those stickier ones, there is going to be some shared burden there. And then we will bring this back to the commission, a similar resolution with a couple of updates. We're going to bring it to the commission on the 24th with the addenda included, and hopefully it gets approved and we sign the closing documents on the 25th. So that's our plan. So tonight's just discussion. If you have any questions about the resolution or the agreement or want to cover anything, and to give the public an opportunity to participate as well.
For me,
And Bill knows all the details on the question, so.
How many easements are there?
there's roughly about 30, but the bulk of those are along one road, Salmon Beach Road.
Okay,
Large number of small properties, and again, that's let me come up.
Yeah. That's all right.
That's
I don't mind.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the majority of the properties are along Salmon Beach Road. We've done a little bit of research on it. Looks like it was intended to be dedicated to the public decades ago when the plat was put together, but we've seen this other times in our service area where for whatever reason it doesn't happen, the road doesn't get dedicated to the public, stays a private road, but it's not resolved as far as utility easements, so that's good news though, because there's intent for what was supposed to be there. That's the bulk. There are the other properties. All of the other properties have something similar to some degree, a private road or drive where it's often easier to go to a landowner and talk about getting an easement versus in their backyard right behind their shed or something like that. But there was one of those that we're resolving with changing some of the water line, short stretch of water line, but that's the summary.
All right. Any other questions? All right. So this will be back at our next meeting.
Yep.
And moving on, we have nothing under new business tonight, just a couple informational items. Any commissioner comments?
Nope.
No. All right, so at this time, we will convene an executive session to discuss potential litigation for RCW 42.30.110, as well as review the performance of a public employee under RCW 42.30.110. Looks like 5:45. We will adjourn the meeting. No action is expected.